Well, that's what moms do, right, moms? Every mom's like, yeah, but me too. That's what we do. Well, I'm excited to share with you today, as always. I feel like last time I spoke on Psalm 23, and that was just Jesus, and it was so, I don't know if it was good for you. It was really good for me. I thought it was awesome. It was a life-changing word for me as I preached it. But, and just the authority of sitting at his table through communion. But this morning, I want to share from my heart with you a little bit. God dropped a word in my heart about seasons, and I think it's just really appropriate. So the title of my message is going to be "'Tis the Season," and not to be jolly, but for other things. But we were together as a family last night, and we were decorating the Christmas tree. And how many of you guys have your trees decorated? Yeah, so far ahead. We're a little behind this year. But as I was hanging the ornaments, and this morning when I got up to pray, I just started looking at them, and I said, wow, they really just tell a story of the seasons of our lives that we've been through. So I brought a couple of those. None of my children are here. Oh, no, there's one. Yeah. So where's the other one? Oh, Karis. I got some pictures here, and I just thought it was so significant as I looked. Okay, so here's the first one. This one's from 1978. That was the year I was born, and my mama painted that for me. And that's cool because she's no longer with us. She's with Jesus, but I get to hang that on the tree every year and remember. We used to do stuff like that together all the time. All right, this one, yes. Any grandmas in here made one of those? You have? I need to get some. So this was like the cash money ornament because my grandparents would hang this on the tree every Christmas, and there was a wad of cash inside it. You'd squeeze those little cheeks, and it was like a bird that would open, and like there'd be some big $20 bills and stuff in there. So that was a really cool ornament that marked a season of my life. Oh, yeah. How many of you guys have these, mamas? They are probably the ugliest things with the cutest picture inside. They are, I don't know what preschool teachers make them small, okay? All our preschool ornaments are probably bigger than the size of my hand. There's another one. That's Lexi. But it marks seasons of your life, right? I think we got one more. Yep, there's Blaze. So these are so fun to pull out every year. What do we have next? Oh, so cool. We did these last year. Brittany had these made up. So Joshua House celebrated 20 years. So we pulled this ornament out, and I think on the back it says, helping youth find purpose. Okay, so now we go into a little series. I have a good friend, Kristen, who's here with us. But every year she gets me an ornament that is just significant. Wait, you're going too fast. Go back. For that year in our lives. And this one was in 2015. It's dig ditches all over this valley. And maybe that doesn't mean something to you, but to me, as I hung that ornament, I was reminded of the prophetic word that God gave us in 2015. And Bishop Bart came in and said prophetically to us, he said, you're going to dig canals and you're going to dig ditches and you're going to bring water all over this state, living water. And so that was before Center City Church was even a thought in our mind. So, okay, next one. This one she got for us the next year, or 2 years later. It says Center City's Church and when it was established, when we were sent out. So it was really cool. And what do we have? Oh, here's another one. Okay, I want you to notice the difference between this one and the next one. This is 2012, and see all those little children? There was lots of children. Here's 2000. There was only one child, right? So marking seasons in your life. And then I think... oh, my mother-in-law, first house, right? It's so cool to hang all these up. And this is the last one. I love this one's precious. You're like, what the heck is that? So this one I discovered this morning. Karis, come here. Tell me about this ornament really quick. Come on, hurry up. You look great today. Your boots. What's going on with this ornament?
Well, it broke, and I really wanted to fix it because it was special to me, so I wrapped it up and tried to put it on the tree.
I think it's an ace bandage. Good job, babe. I found that one this morning. We must have dropped it last night. So there's an ace bandage all around it, big wad of duct tape on the back of it that you can't see. But that'll be a memory forever. So anyway, listen, God moves in seasons. And I show you all those because they're landmarks. They're landmarks in our lives and just a testimony to how God moves in seasons. He created, often you can see what God does if you just take a moment and stop and look around you at the way he created things. He created a father's love. He implemented that here on earth by creating family with a mom and a dad and a father that watches over a family just the way he watches over us. He created seasons, and they change, and there's transition between them. And each season holds something beautiful. Wow. Woo! Ryan, I don't need that this morning. Each season holds something beautiful and unique in itself. And I know there's a thing out there called seasonal depression or whatever, but maybe this is a cure for it. What if you just stopped in each season and embraced it for what it was? What if instead of complaining about being cold, which I'm super guilty of, you just went out and bought some warmer boots and a really nice hat and a thick coat and some cuddle duds and just loved winter and hire someone to shovel your driveway and salt your sidewalk. Right, Theron? Theron bought our last house. He has a massively long sidewalk that the plow just fills up as soon as you shovel it. Why don't we learn to embrace the seasons of our life that we're in? Because I want to tell you something. God is doing something in that season in you. And if you don't embrace it, you begin to despise it. And you begin to hate it. And a lot of times, you begin to get bitter. Listen, life is full of love. It's full of loss. It's full of healing. It's full of heartache. It's full of death. It's full of life. But in all of that, God is wooing you. He's pulling you toward himself. He's trying to teach you about who he is. He's trying to teach you about who you are. And so many times we miss the season of life we're in because we're busy longing for another season. You guilty? Yeah, I'm so guilty. I always want it to be summer. Always. So I'm going to talk to you about 3 seasons that I feel like, of course we have fall, winter, summer, spring, right? But I'm going to talk about 3 seasons that I see in the scope of life that I feel like God lays out for us. And if we can learn to recognize them and embrace them for what they are, I think we'll enjoy life a lot more, quite honestly. So there's 3 seasons. The first one is we have seasons of promise. And the second one is we have seasons of process. So seasons of promise, seasons of process, and then we have seasons of placement. So what do they look like? Promise is that season where there's tons of potential, right? Process sometimes is the tough season. And then most of the time it's the tough season, 99.9% of the time. And then we have seasons of placement. And let's think about it this way. If you were an Olympic athlete and you had a dream when you were a little kid, and then you went through years of years, so the dream would be the promise, right? God speaks something to you. It's a promise from him. It's the potential that's there within you. And then you've got the season of process, which tends to be the longest season, like what winter feels like sometimes. It tends to be really long. And God's working something in you. And he's working something out of you. And then you have the season of placement, which sometimes is like a moment. but man, is it a good moment. So it's kind of like that Olympic athlete who's got a dream when he's a kid, and then he trains for years and years. And he races and he fails and he comes up short. Maybe he gets the silver, the bronze, and not the gold. But then you have like your Michael Phelps moment, right? Where you win more golds than anyone. That's your placement. That's what you were. And maybe you've walked in moments like this, and maybe you haven't yet. Maybe it's still too early. But when you walk in a moment, like I remember having my first child, and just in my heart, like, I was made to do this. I was created for this. Cody, I don't know if you ever have had moments on the stage where like everybody's singing, and the glory of God comes down and people are just weeping and encountering God, and you think, this is what I was made for. This is why I led through the hard days, and this is why I practiced when no one was watching, and this is why I was on my face crying out for God to move, because this is what I was made for. Those are those seasons of placement. So I want to just kind of break this down a little bit, of course, for you, the teacher side. And many of you have heard the story of Joseph, but the Word of God is so powerful. How many guys are thankful? He gives us so many stories, parables to teach us. But let's go to Genesis 37. In verse 3, it says, "Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and also his favorite wife. Also, he made him a tunic of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him." So we got a little family tension going on. It's the holidays, right? Might have a little family tension every once in a while. That's okay. That's part of seasons too. We've got a little family tension. The brothers, very jealous of Joseph. Joseph was dad's favorite. Joseph had special clothes. He had like all the name brands back in the day. They were, his word, nicely dyed. Everybody probably had plain colors on. He had a coat of many colors. He didn't have hand-me-downs. It was made specially for him. He was favored by his dad. So his brothers were jealous. So on top of that, now Joseph has a dream. And he didn't keep his mouth shut, as a little brother so often doesn't. He just kind of got out there and threw the dream up to his big brothers, probably trying to look up to them and, trying to find his place. And he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. He said to them, "Please hear this dream which I've dreamed. There we were binding sheaves in the fields. Then behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright. And indeed, your sheaves stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf." And his brother said to him, "Shall you indeed reign over us, or shall you indeed have dominion over us?" And they hated him even more. So not only did he have one dream, then he had two. And he goes on to tell his dad this and all his brothers. And he said, "Oh, okay, well, now there's stars in the sky, and there's a sun and moon. And all those bow down to me." This is the season of promise. God is speaking to him through a dream. But you know what? Nobody around wanted to hear it. So it says, he told this in verse 10. He told this to his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you've had? Shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come and bow down to you?" And his brothers envied him, but his father kept the matter in mind. So interestingly enough, here in the scripture, the Hebrew word for had a dream means to bind firmly. Dreams, we need to know that dreams are from God, and they're spiritual experiences that root deep in our hearts, never to be forgotten. So in this season of promise, God gives us certain gifts. He gives us dreams. Some of you in this house have a dream. I have a dream. But he's calling you through that dream. Maybe you don't even know God here, but you could still have a dream in your heart that he's speaking to you. And he's calling you through that dream. In this season of promise, he gives us the beginnings of talents and gifts. He begins to show us what he's placed inside of us. Then he begins to give us circumstances to develop us. But you know what the cool thing is about God and his love? He always gives us a choice. He always does. So you could have a dream in your heart, but it's your choice whether you choose to follow it. It was Michael Phelps' choice whether he got in the pool and practiced. It's your choice whether you choose to get up early in the morning and seek God for your life. Pastor Jim can't do that for you. I can't do that for you. You can come here on a Sunday morning and encounter God, and we'll work hard to make sure that that happens and pray God comes and you encounter him. But when you leave this place, Marvin said it to me the other day, are you just a fan and you come on a Sunday morning, or are you a follower? Are you a fan or are you a follower? When you leave here, do you keep following? That's the choice that he gives you. We have to choose to stay the path. We choose how to position our heart. We choose how much we let God direct us or how much we shut him out. We choose how much we let God deal with the things that are within us. Remember, in this first season, it's a season that God's planting things in your heart. He reveals the potential of the promise of what he wants to do through you. He gives you prophetic words, insights, and dreams. And maybe we could say it this way: Joseph had a dream, but I think God so bound that to his heart that the dream actually had Joseph. Are you to that place where maybe God spoke something to you, but you're so convinced now, you're so sold out, you're so convinced that that dream now has had you? And I'll tell you why that's important. Because you're headed into a season of process. And in that season of process, it might get a little bit rough. And in Joseph's season of process, guess what? The boys took his coat. They stripped him, they threw him in a pit, and they sold him. They sold him into slavery. But you know what? Joseph never shook the dream. He knew God, he didn't know the details. He knew God had called him to something great. Listen, he was to lead his brothers. That's why they were bowing down to him, not because he was some high and exalted, mighty figure. There's a lot of responsibility with leadership. It's not taken lightly. And we'll find out later in the story that he led them because he was able to save them. Do you guys remember that this first season's kind of like this? Cody, remember this? How many people have been in like church for like 30 years? Okay. All right, so I might sing out of key because Mrs. is playing with us. But there used to be this song called I'm a Promise. Do you remember this? Kids, does anyone remember this song, kid song? Yes, Ruth Ann. It goes, I'm going to sing it. I am a promise. I am a possibility. I am a promise. Come on. With a capital P. I am a great big bundle of potentiality. And I am learning to hear God's voice, and I am trying to make the right choice. And I'm a promise to be anything God wants me to be. Everybody hear that? You like that? All right. So, song we used to sing in Sunday school. But can you not picture Joseph kind of walking up to the brothers like, I am a promise, I am a possibility, you know? I think he probably stopped singing when he was thrown in the pit. That's my guess. But maybe it stuck with them. You are a possibility, but not to be too cruel, but you're just a possibility right now. Because process is coming and choice has to be made. So the second season is a season of process. I get another song in this one, so just wait for it, all right? And there's two forms of seasons of process. There's God ordained, this is important, and there's self-inflicted. Joseph had God ordained seasons of process. Some people in this room, and I being victim of it too, we've gone through seasons, and maybe you're in a season that's self-inflicted because you ignored God. You walked away when he called you. You just decided to do your own thing. Remember I talked about the prodigal son earlier? That's the story I'm talking about. The prodigal was in, the parable's called the parable of the lost son. He was in his father's house. He had all the promise, all the potential, all the possibility in the world. But he wanted to go out and do his own thing. And he was stupid. Have you ever been stupid? Just stupid. You've done something stupid? Yeah. He did a lot of stupid things. And he's sitting, he had a self-inflicted, his choice, season of process. You've been there? You've been in a self-inflicted season of process. Okay. And listen, there's God-ordained seasons of processes. Joseph had several of them. When his brothers threw him in the pit, he was sold into slavery. Then he went to serve in Potiphar's house, which he did faithfully and flawlessly. Matter of fact, every single thing that Joseph touched was blessed. Potiphar trusted him so much that he had no idea. Potiphar had no clue what he was in charge over. Joseph knew everything. All basically Potiphar knew was who his wife was and where he lived. Joseph knew everything else. And Potiphar's wife threw herself at Joseph. Over and over and over. This was not like a one-time temptation. Like every time he would walk by, she'd say, come sleep with me, come sleep with me, come out with me. Temptation after temptation after temptation. And he said, no. He made a choice. No, he made a choice. No, he made a choice. And you know what God was doing in that season of process? Because this is what God does. In seasons of process, he strips you. He was stripped of his tunic. He was thrown into a pit. Then God tests you. He allows tests to come to you so that your character can be developed, the depth of the well that's within you can be dug. And then he builds something in you. And when Joseph, there was a final time that he said no to Potiphar's wife, and then she sent false accusation against him, which found himself in prison. But you know what happened in prison? Come on, think about the worst situation you've ever been through. Maybe you've been falsely accused about something. Something horrible. I don't know, maybe horrible loss. Think about it. Think about it as your prison. Joseph's thrown to prison, completely innocent. He's been completely faithful, as far as we know by the scripture. He's blessed. There's favor on him. And he's thrown in prison. You know what happens in prison? Everything he touches prospers. The same thing happens again in his season of process. The same exact thing happens. Matter of fact, it says he was put in charge over every prisoner in the jail cell. The same exact words that Potiphar used. Let's see if I can find it. Let's read it here. Hang on. 39:20, it says, then Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were confined. And he was there in prison, but the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy, and he gave him favor in the prison, in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hands all the prisoners who were in prison. Whatever they did there, it was his doing. And the keeper of the prison did not look into anything that was under Joseph. Do you know what God does in your season of process? He teaches you how to earn trust. Joseph was so trustworthy here on earth, so trustworthy with mankind, that there were men who were second in the nation that didn't even know what was going on in their stuff, in their house, because Joseph was so trustworthy. He trusted him with everything. And the same thing happened when he was falsely accused and thrown into prison. The head prison guard trusted him with all the prisoners. That's crazy. Pastor Jim's preaching in the prison today. You're taking someone who's a criminal and you're putting him in charge or accused. Who knows what the truth is? And putting him in charge of the entire place so much that this guy who was in charge didn't even know the comings and goings of the prisoners. Listen, so often we say, if something good happens, I do this all the time. I go, that is so God. Do you ever just say, come on, that is so God. That's so God. No, it's not all the time. It's not all the time. Sometimes good stuff happens. It's not so God. It could be so the devil. Sometimes bad stuff happens and we go, that is so the devil. So the devil. Did you ever say that? That's so Satan. Devil's really getting me today. Okay, maybe. Maybe it's not though. Maybe God's after you. Maybe God let that false accusation come so he could put you in prison, so your character could be developed, so you would have the capacity to hold when you come to your season of placement what he has in store for you. So stop saying every time something bad happens, it's the devil. And sometimes when something good, it could be God. It probably is. He's a good God. But I'm telling you, watch out for good things that aren't God things. All right, so in this season of process, we've got 4 places. We've got pit, we've got the pit. And God does a stripping in the pit, like we said. And sometimes the pit, you know what it does? Remember Joseph? I am a promise, I'm a possibility. I'm a promise with a capital P. Sometimes we got to be a little stripped of that. I'm not so sure if Joseph as a 16-year-old could have ruled the nation of Egypt. I'm not so sure. He did good in Potiphar's house. That was a test. He did good in the prison. And then when it came time to rule the nation and second in charge over the entire economy of Egypt, he was ready. But he had to strip him of a little pride. Sometimes in the pit, God's got to deal with some character issues in you. And then you get to Potiphar's house, and sometimes Potiphar's house, so the pit stripping, Potiphar's house is the testing. Character's got to be tested. Like I said, trust has got to be earned. And then in prison, in this case with Joseph, it's a building season. They don't know exactly, but Joseph could have been in prison for up to 11 years. That's a long time. Think about 10 years ago. How old were you, Raven? 5. You were in kindergarten. You could hardly talk, huh? You could probably talk then. 5. A decade. How old are you? Where's Manny? How old are you, Manny? Oh, 18. Where's someone who's 16? AJ's almost 6. Oh, Nick's 16? I'm going to throw you in prison, Nick. And I'll see you when you're 27. And hopefully God will have worked out what he needs to work out in you. That's kind of what's going on with Joseph. Big dreams. But the interesting thing is, because Joseph was righteous and he chose God and he chose to keep his heart bent toward him, there was favor followed him everywhere he went. It didn't matter if he was in prison or the pit or Potiphar's house. God's hand and blessing was on him. All right, so then we also have, like I said before, those self-inflicted seasons. Those are in the pig pen, like the parable son. Jim posted a quote earlier this week, and it goes like this. It's by Craig Groeschel. And this so reminds me of the season of process. When you are ready to quit, try to remember, it takes death to have a resurrection. It takes pain to have progress. It takes hurt to have healing. It takes struggle to have a story worth telling. And it takes trial to have a testimony. So after you've been through your seasons, your season of promise, oh, I know what it is. You guys got to remind me. I got to sing the other song. In the last season, the season of the pig pen, listen. Those are self-inflicted, but sometimes when God takes us through a process, we got to learn. We got to learn what he's teaching us. Otherwise, you know what song comes to my mind? Ever hear that song? She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes. She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes. Come on. She'll be coming around the mountain. She'll be coming around the mountain. She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes. It reminds me of that song because sometimes we never learn. So we never get to placement. We just stay in process. We just keep going around the mountain. Yes, yeah. We'll just keep going around the mountain. We just keep going around the mountain and going around the mountain. Maybe you're riding 6 wet horses, but you're still going around the mountain. You like that, Meg? I need you as my backup vocal this morning. All right. So seasons of placement, last one. Joseph, as you guys I'm sure know the story. Well, let me say this first. God positions you to carry out the very purpose he made you for. So he's taking you to a season of placement. Now listen, you're not just going to have 3 seasons in your life. You might have several promise seasons. And seasons, they have no regard for age. So Miss Sally might be in a new promise season, okay? And God's then taking her through a process. But these seasons do seem to have this order. They start with promise, they go to process, and then there's placement. And you seem to not be able to skip a season. Like we can't go straight from spring to fall, or straight from fall to spring, or what I'd like to do is go from winter to summer. You can't seem to skip a season. So seasons of placement, God's trying to position you to carry out the purpose he made for you. So in the season of promise, he speaks the purpose, he speaks the potential, and then he takes you through this process of working you and working you and working you so that he may position you. And he does it in a moment. He did it with Joseph in a moment. Joseph interpreted dreams in prison, right and left. And then in a moment, he was forgotten about. And in one day, they took him out of the prison. They shaved him. They dressed him in nice clothes. They gave him a shower. They fed him something to eat. And they put him before Pharaoh and said, interpret the dream. Now is your moment. And from one day, he was a prisoner in a jail cell to the next day, he was second in charge over the nation. But that did not happen overnight. That didn't happen overnight. That happened over a lifetime of process that started with the promise when he was 16 years old and 2 dreams he had. And then God began to bring him through. He threw him in the pit. He put him in Potiphar's house. Then he had him in prison. And Joseph was faithful. He was faithful. He was faithful. And maybe it seemed like he was going around the mountain. But then in one moment, God changed it. But sometimes we wait in that season of process and we don't allow God to work on us. Let God in. Let him in. Gosh, he wants to do something great with you. Let him in. Let him in. There's some people here today who've only let him in part. didn't see Christ hanging from the cross with one arm. He put both arms out. He surrendered everything. He didn't just say, "Whoop, he just cut my hand off. Just nail this part to the cross." Man, I'm telling you, I tell my kids this all the time. Give God it all. Don't hold back any part of your life. Don't try to control something because you think you know best. If it's not on the altar, it's not where it should be. And what I mean by that is if you're not in this place, like put your hands up like this. Both hands, I can't do both because I got the microphone. Now close them like this. Pretend your life's in your hand or parts of your life. Some of us just like we're holding on. We got like 2 fingers. We're clamping something down right here. Come on, open them like this, both of them. That's why we worship like that. That's why I worship like that. Here it is, God. Is that why you worship like that, Ethan? Yeah. Because I want everything. God, I want everything you have for me, but I know I've got to give you everything to get there. And Joseph was there. So when you move into that season of placement, it's a season of prophetic fulfillment. You begin to watch the dreams unfold. It's a season where you begin to impart and be able to bless others. It's a season of victory. And it's a season of testifying what God did through the process. Just like that quote says, you can't have a testimony without a trial. You can't have a victory without a battle, church. You've no idea what peace is like till you've experienced war. And so I want to conclude with this. We have to embrace the seasons that God takes us through. And we can't despise where we are. And you need to decide, probably 95% of people in this room, if not more, are in a season of process. I'm sure of it. But what you got to do in that season of process is you got to decide to surrender it all. You got to hold on to the promise with faith. You need to understand that God is at work in your life. And this is for someone here. You are not a failure. You are in process. You're not a failure. And don't look to your left and right. Don't compare. Stop. Where's your heart? Is your heart bent toward God? Is your heart fully surrendered? Then you are in process. I didn't read anywhere in reviewing this story where Joseph sat in the prison. Maybe he had a moment. I don't know. I wasn't there. I didn't read it though. Where he sat in the prison with his head hung between his legs saying, I'm a failure or I'm forgotten. It's not true. What he said is, I'm going to be faithful because I'm going to cling. That dream has been bound around me, what God showed me. So remember, when you're walking through seasons, stand with integrity in trials and temptations. Keep your heart tender toward God. And remember to step back and as best you can, see things from God's perspective. Especially how he sees you. So I'm going to pray this morning. I think that's all I have for you. Let me check my last page. Don't despise it, okay? Promise, process, and placement. It's coming. Placement's coming, and it'll come again. And you'll get more promise, and more process, and more placement. I'm going to pray for you. We're just going to have a little bit of ministry time. I'm going to give 2 calls, but I'm going to pray for you guys and release you to go on with your day, your Christmas season. But there's 2 calls this morning, and Sally, if you come up with the ministry team, they're gonna come up. These guys are here to pray with you for anything you need, anything. They're amazing. I came to prayer Saturday morning, and they prayed for me. Woo! I would take that every day, all day. It was awesome. So don't be afraid. But listen, number 1, if you found yourself in the pig pen, and what I mean by that is your season of process is a little bit self-inflicted. Matter of fact, you've ran away from your Father's house. Maybe you've never been there. These guys are here to pray with you this morning, and I want to invite you to come because God wants you to be in his house. He doesn't want you to stay in that pig pen, and maybe you screwed up, and you did whatever, but come on back. He's standing on the porch waiting. His reckless love is there waiting for you to turn, waiting for you to make that choice. So that's the first call. And the second one is what I just hit on at the end there. If you feel like just these 2 particular things I want to pray for today, that it was revelation to you when I said that you're not a failure, you're just in process. I want to pray specifically for that because, or maybe you deal a lot with comparison. I know it's a stronghold in this area because I've dealt a lot with it personally since I've come. And usually that's the way God will show me things. And so just comparison, or like you're not worthy, you're not good enough to do what he's put in front of you to do. So if that's you, I want you to slip up here. These guys are going to lead us in a song. I want you just to slip up here and get prayer this morning. So salvation, you got to return to your Father's house. He wants you. And then 2, let's shut the devil up. You're not a failure. You don't need to compare yourself. And my guess is you're most likely in process. That's what's going on. He's making you into something. So pray with me.